Hello, I'm Glenn McGuinness, and welcome to Outburst. This week, we're exploring the future of technology in public services and on public policy.
I don't like cameras everywhere. I don't believe that we should be living in a society where we're surveilled all the time.
And when I think about artificial intelligence, I'm asking, is it really because we want the robots to do stuff that humans don't want to do? Or are they there to have cheap labor?
Calgary actually is going to be one of the first Canadian cities to have the self-driving car that they've been talking about. It was just announced a couple of days ago, and I think that it can be a really handy tool in time-saving and convenience.
From robots to self-driving cars, automated labor to facial recognition software, Canada is changing fast, and few will be left untouched. Behind me is an example of how political campaigns and voting is affected by artificial intelligence. In this unassuming office building in the middle of Ottawa's Byward Market lives Polly, a product of advanced symbolics. This is artificial intelligence for hire. Whether you want to know how someone will vote or if a policy change makes sense, Polly, as the promise goes, will be your quick and very quiet expert.
Just look at our results. I mean, we got Brexit right, we got the Canadian federal election right, we got the American election right, and this time we got the Ontario election bang on.
In the recent Ontario provincial election, Polly predicted with 95% confidence 117 out of 124 Ontario ridings. Also, a majority government for the Progressive Conservatives. She was right.
So the mission for our company is to make Canada more democratic, make the world more democratic. So by being able to go in and listen to what people in these communities are saying, we're able to bypass all the special interest groups, the boards of trade, the associations, all of these people that represent special interest groups. A lot of people in Canada are not heard because they're not going out to the town halls, they're not going out to the meetings, they're not letter writing, but they are having conversations online. So by being able to take representative samples of these populations, we can take that to the politicians and say this is how people really feel.
The power of social media mining and big data can be incredibly helpful for those who shape policy and read polls. But can artificial intelligence actually help to improve democracy? And how much of your personal information are you comfortable with in the hands of political parties? Well, we took these questions out to the streets, and here's what some of you had to say. Do you think artificial intelligence can improve democracy?
Oh, sure. It's a proven truth that it can improve democracy. Everybody is going in the direction of artificial intelligence, yes, and I think that governments, policymakers, economists, in improving the society of the people, we should look more in the direction of artificial intelligence. However, we shouldn't throw away personal intelligence, yeah.
A lot of the decisions voters make at the moment are uninformed decisions. So I feel like artificial intelligence would really be able to improve the decision-making process.
Not really, because it's made by men, and it's like democracy is something that's going to be within the human person, So I think we need to work on that ourselves instead of creating something to work on it.
I think it can be a handy tool. Again, though, like people are using it for personal gain. I don't think that's quite appropriate, but I think used correctly in the right hands, you can gather a lot of great information from people as long as you're doing it openly and not for personal gain.
I feel in that aspect of it, it isn't really allowing us to think necessarily for ourselves, where we're being bombarded consistently with ads and with ideas, and it's being infiltrated at more of a subconscious level.
Well, there's a lot of positive things that can come out of it, where it can compile a lot of data right away and give us quick and easy answers. But at the same time, it really depends on who you've got taking that and using it and why. I've lost a lot of trust in the institutions that be, in that they're going to use wisdom behind it and instead go for manipulation or profit.
I think it could be a great tool, but it's got to be handled well. I mean, just the idea of being able to predict and tailor information to a person, a group, a voter base can be a great tool, but can also be a detriment. It can play a lot of different roles in the outcomes of how things happen, but it needs to be used responsibly.
Earlier this year, Canada's Privacy Commissioner Daniel Therrien raised some red flags in what he called significant gaps on how political parties can use your personal information. He called for stronger rules on how political parties can use your data. The matter was blown wide open when the personal information of over 600,000 Canadians was allegedly obtained by the UK consulting firm Cambridge Analytica via Facebook. We asked Canadians if they're okay with their personal information potentially being used by political parties, or should stronger privacy laws be put into place? Our question: what kind of access should political parties have to your personal information online?
Like everything that I would consent to and like read about, like say my name, my age, my gender, but nothing like my own pictures or anything like that.
I don't think phone numbers are necessary. Birthdays too are a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, pretty much it.
None.
Why do you say that?
Well, I mean, if something I choose to share, I'll share it, but I mean, they shouldn't have public access to it.
Where do you draw the line in what kind of things?
Well, I mean, I don't share a lot on social media. I don't have Twitter or Facebook or anything like that, so I don't have a big online presence. But those that do, I mean, people should have the option to sharing what they want. I mean, should be quite visible, quite straightforward as to what they can and cannot share. And in the past, it's always been a list of, do you agree to this terms and conditions? Click yes, and no one ever reads them. So something much more obvious should be in place.
As much as really any old regular Joe, I suppose. Okay. Whatever is readily available, or that I make readily available.
Yeah. What are you comfortable with?
I think that's same, right? Whatever my settings are at is what I would offer for availability.
So you think that's fair game?
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Personally, I think that while some access is a benefit to political parties, of course, I think we're also entitled to having our own privacy. And so in that sense, I think there's validity in having everyone have their own separate information held separately from political parties, and that information is only accessed at a point in time in which we consent verbally, whether it be on the phone or online. When we offer that information, I don't have an issue with it, but I think that there needs to be a limit put in place to some extent.
I don't think they should have any access to my personal information online. My personal information is my personal information. Why would they need that in the first place?
None. None at all.
Why?
Quite frankly, it's none of their business. I report to Stats Canada for the important stuff. Otherwise, personal information, definitely not.
Does it make you feel uncomfortable?
Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of invasiveness, I think, with technology that just happens from everyday use, Facebook, things like that. Yeah. So anything over and above that is really too much.
Just name and last name, and that's pretty much it. No address, no like age, gender, I guess you can say that. No work information, nothing of that sort. Family, nothing of that sort, yeah.
Absolutely none. No. They should be doing based on a consensus of the people's thoughts and their votes and how they communicate to them about what they are supposed to do while they're in government, and nothing to do with my own individual personal information.
I would think typically like what a grocery store would ask: postal code, name, number, address, how many people are within the household. As far as that, I don't know what else they need to know. Gender or choice of gender was interesting to know, but I think that's as far as it should go.
I think if you have something like Facebook, Twitter, etc., you're kind of just saying, here's my information. So if you decided that you're going to offer up your information and they use it, I don't see a huge issue with that, as long as they're not doing shady things like digging into things that most people wouldn't be able to find. So I don't think they should have anything further than any other person of the public should be able to see. But anything that you're already putting out to the public, it's there.
I want to have my identity kept secret, but if they want to use my information to better serve the world or community as a whole, I'm okay with that. I think that's a good use of data.
Zero, I think. I think they need to make their decisions based on what they have for information. They shouldn't have to have my personal stuff. So,
I think that whatever's out there that's accessible to anyone else, they should have access to it. And that's where you as an individual have to really decide how much information you want online. And so that's very individual for each of us. But I think that if they do a search and whatever comes up, they can have access to that.
I think it should be none, unless you've actually agreed to have some of it shared. Even then, you have to be very careful, especially in this era of breach of security, as we're seeing with BMO and other places.
I don't really care for invasion of privacy, but I mean, if you're considering like the census and stuff like that, that's fine. Like to get efficient statistics about things, I think that's okay. But if it's on social media and your profiles and like Twitter, so anything, really, I don't feel like they should invade in that space for that reason. But.
Not unless they ask for permission. Yeah, I think that's a big thing. They more ask for forgiveness than permission, and to me, that's not okay. I get it. Like for taxes and, like she said, the census, that's perfectly fine, but everybody is entitled, that's invading our rights to be private. I just don't think that they should be going into our social media unless we're being notified of it.
It can be found in airports, casinos, police stations, or even one registry of motor vehicles. But it was Facebook that brought facial recognition technology into public debate. The social media giant introduced the technology to Canadians, and even though automatic tagging is optional, there's a class action lawsuit in the United States that gets underway this summer. The allegations are that Facebook collected a template of users' faces without their consent or without word on where it's being stored or how it's being used. The conversation about how facial images are collected by police or other public officials is happening in Canada too. Whether it's nabbing shoplifters or stopping problem gamblers, the tensions between privacy and protection is rising. So we took to the streets to ask Canadians how comfortable they are with this growing technology. Our question: how comfortable are you with facial recognition in public spaces?
Incredibly uncomfortable with it. I mean, I understand that they use it for catching criminals and stuff like that, but I mean, I think honestly it's gone too far. It's everywhere and it doesn't necessarily need to be, and we all know that they're using this information and selling this information. It's all metadata, as we know, to whoever is the highest bidder, really. And I don't really think that any schmo should have access to my information just because they decide to put cameras up everywhere.
That's a different kind of thing. It depends on what the purpose is. If it is for access as to, say, for example, where I work, it might make things easier. And of course, definitely with the whole, identifying suspects, if police are looking for someone, that's a good thing. So that, I don't know, if it's just recognizing a facial feature that distinguishes you, I don't think that's quite as bad. But definitely if we're starting to include actual information or chipping, things like that, definitely not.
If I would know that it's happening, I'd be fine. Or like how the information is going to be used or how it's being like handled. So yeah, if it's like told to me properly what's happening, then I'm fine.
So facial recognition in public places, I think it's wonderful to be able to access your own phone with it. It definitely is ease of use. At the same point in time, I think we're getting into a point where we're so plugged into everything and everyone. To some extent, I think it wouldn't be the worst thing if we limited the use of it.
Why do you say that?
I think just personally, it's privacy at the same point in time. While it is convenient, there's data collected at the same point in time, and it's this constant virtual trail that follows us around. And I think whether I think it pertains to the use of it, whether it's for business use or personal use. But I think there needs to be standards put in place to essentially limit and for us to personally consent to what that information is being used for.
Not at all comfortable.
Why?
It just kind of creeps me out.
Why does it creep you out?
Okay, it creeps me out because if they can recognize you in place, they could trace you, and I don't really know what they would want to do with it, but I don't know, it makes me uncomfortable having someone able to know whatever I'm doing. Like, even my parents don't know what I'm doing, right? So why would the government know? Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Like, I'm fairly comfortable with the facial recognition, but I understand other people's concerns about it because it is an idle privacy, right?
Why are you okay with it
I
though?
don't know. It just.
Because he's not sketchy.
I'm not. I just don't care to bother myself with that. I guess. Like, I'm not overly worried about it. It's not going to affect my day-to-day life.
That's tough. I mean, I think it's, no matter how comfortable we are, I think it's the inevitable solution to things. I mean, whether you're in the airport, whether you're anywhere, as long as there's a security risk, that it's going to be justified and it's something that we're just going to have to learn to live with. Whether you agree with it or not, you can't avoid it. You can't avoid coming downtown. I mean, just walking around Parliament now, you see the increase in security. That's the next logical step, I think. I don't like it, but it's inevitable.
We already use facial recognition for like airports or like security. I work for CATSA, so like that works around there. I feel comfortable, but at the same time there's also risks with it because everything that goes through your phone, just government has access to everything. So there goes, your privacy is gone, right? So that's it.
I don't know a whole lot about it, but I don't like cameras everywhere. I don't believe that we should be living in a society where we're surveilled all the time. And certainly facial recognition, if it's based on much AI technology is, you know, it has lots of opportunity to be wrong. So, yeah.
As long as it's being used by the appropriate people, so if it's law enforcement or government, I think that's fine.
Doesn't bother you?
No, as long as it's for public safety, I don't think it's an issue at all, no.
Moderately uncomfortable, I would say. While I understand that it improves security, it is also a little spooky, if you will, in terms of privacy and those matters.
Fairly comfortable. I think it's a good idea for safety. Yeah, I don't have too much of a problem with it as long as it's posted that it's in the area, so I'm aware.
We like to embrace our privacy, so it depends on where the facial recognition is going to go. If it's something like in the airport or something like that, where they're looking for someone with a criminal record, something like that, I have no issue with it whatsoever.
So public places like, say, the Forks or the park?
Well, the Forks and the park, as a photographer, I'm allowed to take pictures of people in public if they're in a public place. So I guess you're fair game if you're out in the public. If you're in your backyard, some kind of a private affair, then absolutely not.
Where your face gets recognized by a machine? Boy, I think that's good. The more recognition we can have, because there's so many people slipping under the radar, I think it's good. I think it's really good. Yeah, I wouldn't have any problem with, you know why? Because I have nothing to worry about. So the more they can detect, I mean, I think it's good.
Well, I mean, iPhone updated to have like facial unlock thing. Snapchat has it. My generation is full of that, so I'm okay with it. My mom doesn't like it, but I'm okay with it.
Seems to me the world has changed so fast in that regard. I don't know how you would stop it. If you're in a public place, very, very good chance that you are going to be observed along the way. In terms of police work and identifying people running away from the scene of a crime, yeah, great. In terms of keeping innocent people innocent, you don't need such a strong alibi anymore because it's obviously not you. So it works well that way, sure. Yeah. In terms of privacy, yeah, we're kind of in that world where privacy is not really very achievable anymore. So yeah. So the only thing I would say is it shouldn't be done surreptitiously. It should be obvious, so that you know, yeah, okay, we're in a public space, we're going to be okay.
Artificial intelligence comes to us in many forms, from voice recognition technology to driverless cars to facial recognition. At this summer's G7 summit, leaders of the world's most advanced economies agreed to support developing AI technology to help generate public trust.
They also agreed to promote the use of AI applications by companies in the non-tech sector, develop reskilling programs needed for new jobs and for those at risk of being left out, support an open and fair market environment, including the free flow of information, support and involve women, underrepresented populations and marginalized individuals in the creation and implementation of AI applications, safeguard privacy by developing appropriate legal regimes and investing in cybersecurity.
Canada has promised $3 million over 3 years for student placements in artificial intelligence. So, will that be enough to face the future of AI in Canada and in other G7 countries? With AI being designed to make our lives easier, will it make Canada and the rest of the world a better place to live and to work? Will Canada be freer, easier, and more productive? We took this question to the streets. How do you think artificial intelligence will change Canada?
I think artificial intelligence is going in a really cool direction. I think Calgary actually is going to be one of the first Canadian cities to have the self-driving car that they've been talking about. It was just announced a couple of days ago, and I think that it can be a really handy tool in time saving and convenience and things like that. So I think if we progress properly with it, it can be a handy tool.
I think that, of course, depending on what we tend to use it for, it has some definite advantages to how we're going to be able to move forward, especially looking from a technological standpoint and what we have to offer the rest of the world.
There's a lot of good things that can come out of technology. Actually, I use it all the time. I think Canada has a brilliant population that can really bring a lot to the international table as far as giving us just bringing technology forward in a good way. And largely, I think, actually, just because of who we are as a country, we seem to have some really, I feel like we have some good rooted values in, where everyone has a seat at the table. And I'd like to see technology follow that kind of vein as well.
And I think being a front runner and a creator in that industry would give Canada a huge advantage, both in terms of helping a population grow or learn or develop, but also in predicting things from behaviors to attitudes to political gain to how people use everyday technology, how people interact with each other.
With all the industry being robotized and everything, I guess some people are going to lose jobs at some point, so they're going to have to reinvent the industries in general and create more jobs that are different, more in the service or whatnot. I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately.
Well, honestly, I don't believe that it will happen. But if it does, well, everyone will have the same mindset and everyone will be reacting the same way. I feel that's how I think, and probably we won't have different reactions or emotions towards things since we would have our own artificial intelligence.
I'm afraid that jobs are going to be lost. And at one point in my mind, when I think about artificial intelligence, I'm asking, is it really because we want the robots to do stuff that humans don't want to do? Or are they there to have cheap labor in the long run? And it seems that way to me because, through the years, making everything electronic, making everything computerized, this is where it goes. Like even the cash, I was thinking about that the other day. Cashiers, Interact is one form of getting rid of somebody. You go to the supermarket, and now you have machines that you can just buy from, so they can get rid of more cashiers, human cashiers. They can use these robots to do the job. So it feels like everybody in the world is going that way. They want to get rid of the labor to make more profit. And this is like the greed at its best is going to be, of course, through artificial intelligence and in many different platforms, in any forms. I'm afraid of that.
we need to be focusing on what we can do for like our schools and our seniors, especially in Canada. There's a lot of baby boomers, so we need to focus on that first instead of like creating some stuff that's going to make us pay more taxes or something like that. I don't know. So yeah, I think it's not necessary, really.
Artificial intelligence changing Canada, that's kind of scary because I like it here. I like it. I've been here for 12 years and I like the way it is. So I don't want it to, I want it to stay the way it is.
I think it can. It just depends as to when we get there. I guess it's just, like I said earlier, like if it's within reason, if it's used for the good, then it can change it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Indigenous Canadians make up what percentage of the population? 4.9%, 10.2%, or 15.3%?
Oh man, I want to say that it's 4.9, but I think it's 10.2.
I know it's really, really low. I'd say 4.9%.
I'm going 10.2.
15.3.
4.9.
It is 4.9.
Okay. Whoa, yay! Whoa.
According to Statistics Canada, as of 2016, there are more than 1,600,000 Indigenous people in Canada. That makes up 4.9% of the population. These Canadians are young, and their numbers are growing fast. Between 2006 and 2016, Canada's Aboriginal population has grown by 42.5%, more than 4 times the growth rate of non-Aboriginal people. Canada's Métis population is the fastest growing, rising 51% across the country from 2006 to 2016. In Nova Scotia, the number of people self-identifying as Métis has jumped almost 125% in that same time period, and by almost 150% in Quebec.
That's all for this episode of Outburst. Next week, we'll be exploring what it means to be Indigenous in Canada. And here's a little bit of what you'll see.
The word Indigenous implies, or the word Native implies, that you're the original occupants of this land, and I think we all forget that sometimes.
It seems like it's an uphill battle for many of our Indigenous people here in Canada, and I'd like to see that change, that people are more aware, and I think that only comes through knowing someone.
The history of our Native peoples should be taught just like everything else.
Like the residential schools and treaty rights, things like that. I never learned that as a kid, so I'm just learning about it now, actually.
Remember, you can also share your opinions with us on social media. You can find us at cpac.ca. I'm Glenn McGuinness, and on behalf of all my colleagues at the Cable Public Affairs channel, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time on Outburst.